Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Jones. I'm Deputy Dean in the Faculty of Computing, Engineering and Media and Associate PVC for Education, looking after transformation. It is my absolute pleasure to sit down and have a chat over a very rare lunch break on today, International Women's Day. The theme this year is Break the Bias. It's about combating bias, both conscious and unconscious, which is at the core of tackling discrimination and inequality. Women's experiences are so varied, and there will never be one size that fits all. And in our faculty alone, those experiences are vast. We are fortunate in our university to be well placed to support this call to action to break the bias. And this panel we have today will be doing that right now. So let's welcome on some colleagues, alumni and students who I am privileged to work with. Each will come on one by one and introduce themselves, and then we will start this discussion. So first up is Indrani.
Hello, thank you very much, Sarah. It's been, as you say, a wonderful lunch break. So I am Dr. Indrani Lahiri, and I'm a senior lecturer in media and communications based within computing, engineering and media faculty. So that's me, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you, welcome. And next up is Pamela.
Hi all, thank you Sarah. My name's Dr. Pamela Hardaker and I'm the Associate Professor for Student Experience in the Faculty of Computing, Engineering and Media.
Fantastic. And next we have one of our alumni, Lubna. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, this is Lubna here. I work as a data scientist at RM. RM is a ed tech company leading supplier of technology and resources for education, and I graduated in 2019 after having completed my master's in data analytics from De Montfort University.
Fantastic, looking forward to hearing about your experiences. Next we have Gemma, another one of our alumni.
Hi everyone, yeah, I'm Gemma. I currently work as the Senior Global Marketing Manager for a company called AKQA, and we are a branding and digital design agency, and we look after some incredibly exciting clients from Netflix through to Rolls-Royce and everything in between. I am a De Montfort alumni from 2004, and I've had a very squiggly career to get to where I am today. I was originally an arts and humanities graduate, but now working in the sector.
That's a really interesting journey. I'm sure we will be able to pick up on as well. Next, we've got Shivani.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Shivani, and I'm working as a cybersecurity engineer in RedScan Kroll business. And my company is provides cybersecurity services to all the clients in the UK. And thank you for inviting me.
Fantastic. And last but not least, one of our final year students, Timmy.
Hi everyone. So I'm Timmy, also known as Timmy. I'm a final year electrical and electronics engineering student, and I'm also a student ambassador at JMU.
Fantastic, thank you. This is such a great group of colleagues and alumni and students to sit and have this chat with today. So thank you all so much for your time, and we will get straight into it. As I mentioned, the theme for this year's International Women's Day is Break the Bias. So my first question to you all is, what does that mean to you? And I'll start first with Indrani.
Well, I think, bias is kind of an inherent part of us as human beings, and I think this is the day we are saying, hey, let's face it, we can't break bias without actually identifying and examining. We have got lived experiences, and of course that brings in the beliefs and perspectives. So to me, breaking the bias means understanding the biases, examining the biases, and understanding the perspectives and beliefs that I am bringing in. So I think, yeah, so breaking the bias means examining the bias to me.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective. Pamela, is this something similar for you, or do you have another take on what that means?
I think for me, breaking the bias is a very personal thing. I think I first realised I was swimming upstream in about 1981 when I had to choose my A-levels. Do the maths and you'll work out how old I am. At that point, in schools, I kid you not, the girls still did cooking and needlework, and the boys still did metalwork and woodwork in 1981. And I took the decision to leave school at 16, horror of the all-girls school that I was at, that I was going, because I wanted to go to the local technical college to take computing A-level. And it never occurred to me to not do that. It never occurred to me to stay at the sort of prestigious named grammar school that I was at, because what I wanted to do was computing, and the school didn't do it. And throughout my life, I have decided I'm going to do what I want to do. And if it doesn't fit in with somebody else, they're going to have to find a way of dealing with that for me. It was really quite shocking that still at that time, though, I mean, my first job I had to wear a skirt. So it's taken a lot of effort and a lot of pushing, but I have basically just done what I wanted to do and kept pushing. And if somebody says, but you know, women don't do that, not interested, I've just kept going.
They are very, very familiar words, aren't they? That pushing, the breaking, which is very much what we are here talking about, I guess, today. Lubna, how about yourself?
Like Dr. Hardaker, it's a very personal journey for me that's kind of given me my perspective, my take on what bias would be. So I graduated with a computing degree at bachelor's level, but I went on to do different things because I had 2 children, really, and I was living overseas. And the way the system was stacked against me as a woman kind of seemed very unfair at so many levels. And for me to have taken about 13 years to find my way back to computing is partly because of that bias that existed. So really, it's for me to speak about the different challenges that women face that probably men don't face. And I think it's particular to certain sectors in employment, and technology is really one of those troubled areas, I think, where women generally have it harder than men. So for me, it's my personal journey, really, that's kind of given me this perspective.
We'll come back to that as well in those specific areas, because I think that's really important for this conversation. Gemma, what does breaking the bias mean to you?
Well, in my role, I work across 29 studios globally. So I see these pockets of conversation happen around the world, and everybody is saying the same thing, that women need to be given the opportunities to succeed. And all of our studios globally and the people that I'm working with are saying these same things, that we need to empower women, that we need to give them the tools and the opportunities to succeed and be better versions of themselves and really step into those leadership roles to really drive progress forward. And that's incredibly positive. But on the other side of that, being a woman in this industry, I see how far there is still to go, and still see that only 3% of creative directors globally are women. Like, that's crazy. 3% of a huge industry. So there are lots of things happening to try and make that change and try and drive it forward. But I also think that the more that we can do within our industry to advocate for women and be those cheerleaders that can really open the doors for people that are coming through and really have that nurturing spirit amongst us is so important. So I see it on a global level. I feel it personally, and I think for all of us on this call, we've all got our own stories about how bias has shaped us becoming the versions of ourselves that we are today. You talked, Lubna, about having your children and it taking you 13 years to get to where you wanted to be. For me, my accent and where I came from and where I grew up held me back, because I'm from a very small northern town in England, and that was huge. That hugely went against me. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how much that hindered the start of my career. So I think for all of us, that ability to advocate and really open the door for people is truly important, and that really does go some way to breaking that bias.
Yeah, I think cheerleading is such an important thing to do. It is really about supporting and helping everybody else around us. And hopefully, Timmy, that's something that you feel as a student in here. But what's your experience? What does breaking the bias mean to you?
So for me, I think growing up, or basically, literally everyone has different backgrounds and we have like different experiences growing up. And through some of these things, we've sort of developed stereotypes that have fed some kind of bias in one way or the other, whether consciously or unconsciously. And I think for me, breaking the bias basically means being conscious of this bias, like trying to consciously identify what part of your thought process is based on some biases, and generally just paying more attention to your decision making processes and your thought processes and seeing whether you're being biased in one way or the other that you probably didn't notice before. So yes, from like I've had varying experiences, and some of these biases I can say, oh, it wasn't exactly, they didn't mean it, but we should do more by consciously trying to, take a step back and look at how we're doing things to sort of break bias. And that's what it means to me.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll move on to the next question, which is about those kind of stereotypes and discrimination that you've kind of felt in your subject areas or in your career. I always think back to my first kind of career, I guess, before universities, where I worked in television, and I was blonde. So you can imagine the kind of stories that I was told to go and cover, those nice, happy, friendly, and finally types of stories, which is solely based on gender and hair colour. Another time, another place, thankfully. But what kind of experiences have you had that you'd like to share now of kind of gender bias, stereotypes, discrimination maybe in your career? And we'll go with Lubna first.
Well, so when I started applying for jobs as a fresh graduate, well, at so many levels, it required that I be mobile, and this is not in the UK. It was abroad. So for me to be able to travel, that itself was a bit of a problem, because a lot of those countries, this I'm specifically speaking about the Middle East, where I lived for a long time before moving to the UK. So if you were a single woman, you wouldn't get a visa approved. You'd have to be accompanied by a male member of your family to travel. Now, that was a bit of a problem if you were applying for roles that had some sort of a responsibility to connect with your clients, and the marketing, the sales teams who are probably not located in the same place as yourself, then you are kind of restricted in the kind of roles that you'd apply. And two, this was when I had kids. So childcare responsibility was very much upon myself as the person with parental responsibility. And there were not many jobs that offered that kind of flexibility to work. It would be straight 7 hours or 8 hours. And when you'd have childcare available only for maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, what are you supposed to do for, the other hours that you cannot possibly be at work? You didn't have a lot of flexibility within those roles that tech as a domain had to offer back then. Split shifts were not very common. You'd have to work straight 7 to 8 hours. And with all of those things kind of stacked against me, I did lots of different things, some probably that I'm not very proud of, but it's made me who I am. So I got into teaching, and I decided to stay in education for that whole 10, 12 years that I was away from technology. But that kind of shaped me into the person I am today. So alongside having a computing degree, I went on to have an equivalent qualification in education and taught foreign languages, specialized also in working with children with special needs. So that's a completely different side of the spectrum when it comes to the skill set. You know, a person who enjoys coding, who's glued to the computer, and on the other side, you're there teaching languages to children, working with children with special needs, not just learning difficulties. I like to say there was a point in time when I spent a good year long volunteering at a school that specifically worked for children with special needs. So through that experience, I think I managed to gain tons of other skills that I'd normally not have acquired if it was a very straight career pathway, but that's kind of shaped me to the person that I am today. And I now bring all of that experience and learning from all of those different roles that I've held into my current role, which is very much in ed tech. So I think in some way or the other, it's been a bit of a blessing for me, but I'm still a mother. I've got a son and a daughter. Tomorrow, when they grow up, I want them to both have equal opportunities, no matter what they want to do with their lives. And I'd like the world to be fairer and more considerate when it's my daughter's turn. So that's really one of the reasons why I'd like to get involved with a lot of outreach and volunteering activities as well. Because when I was growing up, maybe someone like myself who looked like me, wore a scarf and worked in tech and sat among men, very stereotypical as it may sound, but most of the teams within the technical side of the business that I work, there's just one of my kind. On a very rare occasion, I'd find another woman, but definitely not one that looks like me. So then again, there is that diversity bias that exists in technology in particular. So that's kind of brought me to realize it's not as simple as it may seem. There is a bigger underlying problem that'll need further exploring and talking about.
But there is a big piece, isn't there, on, if you see it, you can be it. And that's so important when we are talking about sort of women in technology and those kinds of careers. Timmy, can I come to you as a student on electrical engineering? How have you found the biases maybe, or the stereotypes that for being a young female student?
I think generally when you tell people, oh, I'm studying electrical electronics engineering, they're like, ooh, how are you coping? How many do you have girls on your course? And things like that. So generally my first instinct is whenever I see another girl on my course, you can literally ask them, I'm like, hi, hello. Like as if I've known them before, but because it feels like such a very nice thing, and I'm always so excited to see another female within my course. So that's just like how it has what it has led to. And without highlighting on any experiences in particular, I also engage in like extracurricular activities, or I have other interests outside my academics that are also male dominated. And what I've noticed is the fact that if you have like a male and you have me with the same sort of skill sets and maybe not the best, but have potential to grow, they rather pick the male because they think they seem to have some form of like more potential, or picking it up like quickly, or blending in better. And that when I notice it, and when I notice things like that, it sort of puts me down. But given the kind of personality I am, I try to just look for alternative means, and I grow myself, even though I know that since the male counterpart has been provided that opportunity, that's sort of a step ahead of me now, because they had that opportunity to develop those skills. So yeah, that's what I would just say generally is what has been my general experience within male dominated industries, whether career based or just interest based. Generally, you just have this mindset that the males have a better potential of blending in better. And I think also it is because of the fact that since we have more males in the industry, they think, oh yes, they can easily blend in because they're the same species. But you have females, we can also do things like that. We can also grow at the same pace. So give us that opportunity, give us the platform to also develop ourselves. Don't underestimate us or think that because we're different, we can't blend in, or we can't fit in, or we can't balance the system. So
absolutely. And we do obviously do quite a lot of support in our faculty, which is great. And I always think because we've got a female dean, which I always think is a great thing to have as well. And we've got our students of Women in STEM Society. So hopefully that community will grow, I hope. Pamela, if we come to you, if you've got any experiences you'd like to share of gender bias or stereotypes maybe?
I'm afraid so. Sometimes in quite shocking places. When I did my degree at De Montfort University, I did information technology, and exactly as you were just saying, Timmy, the number of students on the course was 65, the number of females was 4, and that very quickly dropped as the years went on. But I did a placement at CERN, and I shared an office with several other people, as people do at CERN. They mix you up so that you meet different people from different countries, people from different areas. And in our office, there was a gentleman that took an awful lot of phone calls because he was the head of a certain project. And so we each answered each other's phones. And it shocked me the number of times that when I answered the phone and said, no, Silvano's not here, the next question was, are you his secretary? Every time. And it's actually, it really hurts. I mean, it hurts from so many different sides, because just stereotyping a secretary as female is just wrong. But assuming that you couldn't be somebody on a similar level to that person is very unpleasant. One of my first jobs after I graduated was working for a company that wrote the software for Formula One cars, that controls Formula One cars, that does the gear shifts, that does the speed changes and so on. And they actually had to use word search in the contract to replace he and him with she and her. There had never been a female software engineer at that company before. And probably the worst one was, after all of these, it was actually in the year 2000 and beyond, it was in the new century. I went to install a computer in a job that I was doing, and was actually met with, oh, I'd expected a man, do you know what you're doing? And it was from a woman. It was actually a woman that said that to me, and it's the closest I've ever come to just walking out, I'm afraid, because I was so cross that there was just this assumption that you wouldn't know what you were doing. What gives me so much pleasure hearing today is how many other people like me have had all of that and just kept going, because that's what we want to do, and we're going to do it anyway. So I'm really pleased to hear so many other people.
It just carries on, and it doesn't stop. I'm at a technology conference for 2 days. I'm delivering the keynote, and yet one of the guys wanted to show me how to open the app to scan in for the conference. And I just looked at him, I didn't know what to say. And I was like, either I can be really rude now, or I can just smile and nod sweetly. And I chose to do that, which is infuriating me now.
Guess what I choose to do?
So Shivani, how about yourself? Any kind of moments that you felt gender bias or stereotypes?
Yes, like I must say, because, in my company, from junior level to the senior level, there is only me who is a girl working as an engineer. But to be honest, I've been very lucky with my company. I haven't faced such things. But if I come out of the organization and I see around the people around me, when I started doing my master's in cybersecurity, I've heard like some people used to come, like especially men, I'm talking about, like come to me and say like, that is not cup of your tea, like you are not capable to do that because it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of knowledge. You have to implement each and everything. So, but I have faced these things as well, like because UK is kind of a new country for me. I've just recently moved in here. So to be very honest, I took it as an opportunity to prove myself always. So that is how it works for me.
Okay, thank you. Indrani, how about your experiences?
I actually had a good experience regarding good amounts of things that I can share, and some of it, of course, as colleagues was discussing, and I was thinking, well, I have been through this as well. So, say for example, when I started working at DMU, my child was only 3 months old, and there were people, when I was moving, they were kind of asking, why are you so careeristic? Why do you have to join a job now when you have got 3 months to look after? Um, so those are the kinds of things that I've come across. I have also been told that I'm too ambitious, and there are colleagues actually. I'm quite proud that it's a kind of conversation I believe that you need to have within the colleagues, and there are people who can actually support you a lot as well. But sometimes, when you hear this actually saying, well, as a working mom, you can't actually give too much, you can't do so many things at a time, you can't actually balance things. It's okay to kind of leave other things when I know that I'm capable of. It's up to me how I utilize my time, it's up to me where I contribute. So I think these are the kind of things which can actually impact your self-esteem quite a lot, which I have faced. But at the same time, I believe that it's something, as I was saying, that breaking the bias means that you kind of understand where it is coming from, and you understand how you can build yourself on top of that, and kind of stay resilient. Because otherwise, that's going to make me less productive, and I will be questioning myself and my moods, which I did actually at some point. I was thinking, okay, I should stop. You have got that mother's guilt all the time, but when there are extra levels of top-ups on that, then you feel very uncomfortable. And I think those are the kinds of challenges that I have faced, and also sort of face where where you turn up, and of course when you speak to a person over phone, they just don't know, have not seen you. But when they see you face to face, you can see some of the comments, or some of the things like, okay, I could have looked much more younger, or it's more kind of, as Sarah you were saying before, that it all links back to your skin color, and then your hair color, how you look, how you talk, and as a woman, and of course, you have to be more empathetic, and that's what basically the norm of the society. So you can't challenge, you have to accept. And I think those are the things that we all have possibly come across, and I'm trying to break as well. So yeah.
Yeah, Gemma, if I can come to you as well, and we often think, we are this diverse faculty. We've got media, we've got sort of digital arts, and then we've got computing, and we've got engineering. So we are very diverse, and it's often that misconception that the bias and the stereotypes is more rooted within the technology. And I know that's not the case from media. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I hinted at it before that my lovely northern accent, which has softened over the years because I've lived in various places, has really held me back. I remember going for an interview, and the person that was interviewing me was looking through my CV, and they went, "Oh, one of the lucky ones, are you?" And I said, "Sorry," it really caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "Oh, you managed to escape and get out." And this was a reference to me living in a very small town in the north of England and going to a job interview about 25 miles away, which really wasn't that far, and that being perceived as that way. And much like fellows on this call, I actually became a teacher after I left De Montfort because I wanted to give back, and I felt like a good way to give people more opportunities was to go into the classroom and really try and help young people see that there's more to have in the world and access, because growing up I just didn't have that. I wanted to give something back, and I was, at the time I was assistant head teacher, and had a parent meeting, and the parent turned up with their child for this meeting and started laughing when they saw me. And I said, "Oh, sorry, is there something wrong?" Like, thinking I was covered in glue or something, something ridiculous had happened in the classroom. And they were like, "No, we were just expecting an old person. You're very young." And I was so taken aback that they wouldn't take me seriously because I didn't fit their image of what, a head teacher would look like. I wasn't old enough, therefore I wasn't going to be taken seriously. So I've had it at kind of both ends of my career, starting it and going for my teaching job, and then sort of once I'd reached what I wanted to achieve within teaching, and then decided to actually find my love again of what I wanted to do. So I've had that at both sides, and it's wild that those comments come from both males and females, just like what all our colleagues have said on here today, that it is so ingrained within how we are brought up because of the dominant ideologies that are perpetuated through the media all the time, that we just accept it. So it's really important that we challenge that and question it, and just try and help people understand that can be quite damaging when those conversations continue to be had. Yeah.
So actually, first, before we move on to the next question, if anybody is watching this and wants to put a question to any one of our panel guests, then do please add that into the comments, and we'll be able to ask those questions towards the end of this session. So type away, feel free, break that bias of not asking questions, which is obviously familiar to many of us. But I want to wave my magic wand and sort of grant each of you one wish, one idea to create more diversity and inclusivity and equitable outcomes in your area. If I could grant that one wish, what would it be, or what action would it be? So I will start with Shivani. What can be done then to create more diversity? If I could grant your wish today, what would it be?
Actually, like as we discussed about we have a society like Women in STEM Society. So the whole sole purpose of that is to like spread diverse and such knowledge among the women, especially because there are a lot of things like it takes a lot of courage to come out and stand in the tech industries out. Because the problem is people are too much scared, like especially women are too much scared to go and stand out in the male dominant world. Because there's codes and are a bit little scary to look at, but this is the message I want to spread about it, that if I had that kind of a wish, that I'll just go and fulfill everyone's to have that courage and go out and stand about it and speak to yourself and just start believing, because this is very easy. Unless and until you do that, it won't be possible. So go ahead and do that. And just keep valuing each and everyone's opinion. Never hesitate to ask questions. So these are the things I'll just go and give people courage about that.
Fantastic. Indrani, what can be done for you?
Well, I think long-term mentoring really helps. So it's about building that conversation, but also I believe that, standing up for yourself, I believe that, you kind of challenge yourself every day to kind of say, well, you can do it and you need to actually do it, so that, the younger generation don't hesitate as you hesitated in your time. So I think it's kind of creating that pathway is very important, and that can be done through the mentoring, like talking to colleagues who have faced it, have got real life experiences, and they can actually, give us more sort of understanding around how they navigated through that crisis or through those kind of problems that they have to face.
Okay, great, thank you. Timmy, is there an action that would help you right now, or maybe long term as you think about what you might do when you graduate?
For me, I have this belief that we each have our differences, and that's what makes us unique individuals. So creating a more diverse or inclusive environment is going to be each and every one of us constantly, first of all, appreciating our differences, then not seeing the next person's difference to more as superior as the other person. So if I'm different to you, I shouldn't think that because my own kind of difference is way better or is more superior compared to yours. I should sort of strive for a form of balance between these differences of ours, and just generally appreciating our differences, drawing strength from these differences, creating a balanced environment, not being condescending as to why the other person is different, and just valuing everyone, making everyone feel important regardless of even regardless of the fact that they are different. So your difference shouldn't be a barrier. It should be something that makes you actually stand out. And if we all have that mindset, that is, if I had a magic wand, this would just be to make everyone have that mindset that my difference, your difference, is what makes you unique and what makes you stand out and is your strength.
I have a lot to do with my magic wand, don't I? But that's great. Gemma, what kind of action would help you in your area?
Yeah, make no assumptions. That would be my magic wish, because as soon as you make an assumption about somebody, you're removing them from the conversation, and that is detrimental to progress. So I think for everybody, make no assumptions whenever you are considering anybody with anything. Have a conversation with them. The worst thing they're going to say is, no, that's not right for me, or I don't want that, or you shouldn't do that. Like, nothing bad is going to happen. So for me, I would wave the magic wand, make no assumptions, and then that way you're not placing restrictions on somebody. You're allowing them to flourish, and have that conversation with them. It's not ever going to be scary. You're not going to get a bad answer. It's going to help you reframe what you're thinking, and make it a more harmonious, successful environment for people to work within. So yes, waive it with no assumptions, please.
Fantastic. Lubna.
For me, it'll be to have more role models and mentors within whatever workplace we are situated at. So for me, it's more about showing kindness to people of color, who come from diverse backgrounds, who are probably the silent minority in most places, to be treated with more kindness and room for them to grow and flourish within the roles. So if they could each have some sort of a mentor and a support system, that'll kind of help them in the short term, yes, but the way I think these people will go on to share that message will help more people of diverse backgrounds to enter those areas. So I think that's what I'd want.
I think role models and mentors are so important. It's always great on International Women's Day when I think about all of those women that have really helped and supported me, and made me think that I could do something, which is so fortunate. Really grateful to all of those. Pamela, final thought with you. What do you think can be done more to help diversity, inclusivity, and maybe equitable outcomes in your area?
I think the people before me have covered most of the things that I would think of, but I do keep wondering whether we could look at more gender neutrality. So potentially finding a neutral gender pronoun, but also on things like papers or in emails, we could potentially just sign ourselves off as P. Hardaker. So that it isn't immediately apparent whether you are male or female, and then everybody just has to deal with everybody in the same way. That's just my little thought for my magic wand, please.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to granting all these wishes later today. We have got a question in from somebody that's watching. It's a question for you, Indrani, which is about going back to work after your child. And you said that you went back and trying to stop those stereotypes of people still judging you for not staying at home longer. I did exactly the same. I went back very, very quickly after 2 children, and it's really tough. It was really tough for me. And a lot of people judge mums, right? A lot of people judge, and they judge everything. When you go back to work, if you go back to work, if you don't go back to work. I found that quite hard to cope with. Indrani, how did you find it?
Exactly. I mean, the question I have faced actually after that as well, and it kind of continues. It's not that I wanted to set an example, but I was not kind of keen to stop people saying it, because people will say it, you can't stop. But the thing is that once you start setting examples, then others kind of can live up to it, and it becomes easier for them to then kind of think and not feel that guilt that I have been facing or I have been feeling. So I think that For me, it was very much about, the questions that I was getting at that point of time, but also now, are you really a good mom? Are you taking care of your child? When you're leaving them in after school, do you really need to do that? Can you not go part-time? Can you not do this? Can you not do that? So it's kind of, how, because I won't actually, again, it goes back to that judgment. So I'm not going to judge the person who's asking me the question, because they are asking that question from their lived experience, and we need to understand that as well. And that's why, as I was saying at the very beginning, that bias is something that you can't just break one day, but you need to actually understand it, where it's coming from. So for me, I think I had a lot of conversation within myself. I use lots of sticky notes to kind of boost and uplift my thoughts and that kind of thing when I was going through that. Because, of course, as a mom at that point of time, I was still recovering, and I was working, and I was trying to understand how to bring up a child. That was kind of a very new experience for me. I didn't have much helping hands around me. So altogether, the challenges were coming. But I think it is what I have realized and what I've taken from that sort of episode is that you need to kind of stay focused, and you need to kind of understand what you as an individual can do and how far you can do. It doesn't matter what others are saying, because if you kind of start taking those sort of other explanations or judgments, then you're just going to harm yourself even more. So I would say that to stay strong is one of the things that I have learned from that experience.
Great, thanks for that. And it is, we are all different. I mentioned that at the start. There's not one size that fits all approach. We all have very, very different experiences. And I want to come on to that now. And Timmy, you mentioned it before, that if I gave you your magic wish, it would be to celebrate those differences. So how can we better do that? Has anyone got any great ideas that we can kind of put into practice, I guess, and really value and celebrate differences? Timmy, because you gave such a great answer before on this, I'm going to start with you first.
Absolutely. So for me, I mean, the first thing is being being aware of these differences. Like, you should know what makes me different to the person next to me. Once you're aware of that, you sort of develop a genuine interest to understand the other person. So I think from this genuine interest of trying to put yourself in the other person's situation and understanding the next person, it just makes you like appreciate them, because now you've put yourself in that position. You can sort of imagine that, oh, if I was in that situation, this is how I'll be feeling. And you from there you can take the next step to know what exactly can I do, how exactly can I do. And obviously, like you said, we are very different, not because how one person feels or how one person feels appreciated is different from the next. And that's where the genuine interest in understanding these differences with respect to those people comes in, because from there you can appreciate them, like with respect to what matches them, and you can easily acknowledge their input. Because another thing when it comes to celebrating differences, that fine, we can know that, oh yes, we're different, but deep down they might feel the need to constantly prove themselves, and you constantly acknowledging what they've done, rewarding them, just appreciating them in general, it just reduces the pressure of the need to constantly prove themselves. So that's basically what I would say as what we can do to celebrate our differences.
Great, thank you. Really, really useful insights there. Gemma, you've obviously moved around in industry and had this kind of diverse career, I guess. How do you think from those experiences that we can value and celebrate difference?
Yeah, I think it's highlighting it weirdly without pointing it out as a difference. It's celebrating the stories that make us individual through many different facets across the business. So that could be features within a weekly newsletter. It could be the content you create to talk about what is happening within the culture of the company. It could be through employee resource groups, for example, that meet regularly and then feed into town halls and global town halls. It's about embedding and celebrating that difference within the company culture where you work, so that it's not highlighted as a difference. It becomes part of the everyday conversation. It becomes part of the fabric of the place where you work, so that it becomes normal, and people aren't going, oh, well, look, she's a woman, let's get her on this because we need a diverse team, or oh, that person didn't go to that particular school, so let's get them in here because then it makes it diverse. It's about knowing and understanding your workforce and understand the people that pull together to create the incredible output that you have within your company, but keeping it normal, normalizing the conversation, I think, and that can go such a long way, because if your company culture can normalize that celebrating of the difference, then everybody pulls into that, everybody feeds into that, and it becomes part of the everyday conversation, and that can be really transformative. When it is down to one day on a calendar once a year, it can be quite an anxious time, I think, for some people. I know some people really dread International Women's Day. Like, that can be quite a triggering moment for some people. So I think it's about that normalizing the conversation around it.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. It is important to recognise that it is a challenging day for some, absolutely. Shivani, do you have any thoughts on how we can better value and celebrate differences?
I think appreciation is the biggest thing to do that, like appreciating all the cultures and every single person around you, like, because that makes everyone's day and gives a little kind of an energy to work on everything, like while we're working. Or like even in university, because there are, like, are there people in nature, like, who just love to give you appreciation, like even for the like smallest things. They come up and say, oh my god, that was so lovely, how did you do that? So that is kind of initiating that kind of environment, I think, will help a lot.
Great, thank you so much. I want to move on to the next question, which is quite similar in some ways, but it's about how do we support each to forge equality for women. Lubna, I'm going to start with you, because you mentioned before the importance of role models and mentoring. How might we develop that kind of further to really support and help develop equality for women in the workplace?
I feel it kind of addresses why and how we can support, promote, and celebrate what women do. I'm saying this because not all women have the same kind of starting points. So if they've got someone who's happy to support them and promote them within whatever space or whatever capacity that they work in, and kind of celebrate, no matter how small their achievement may be, that'll definitely give some sort of a moral boost and help them aspire to achieve more. So that could be one of the ways how we can start supporting other women in the workplace. But it's got to be also kind of shared across the business, I think, whatever organizational structure it may hold. And by that, I mean allyship coming from our male colleagues as well. I mean, women can serve to be mentors and some kind of support system for other women, but we need that essential allyship coming from our male colleagues as well, who recognize, yes, there is a need for this kind of support, and how best can they offer their support to that.
Thank you. Pamela, what about you? What do you think that we can do more to support each other?
I absolutely agree on the mentoring and on the leading by example. And although I never set out to do any of the things that I've done to lead by example, it's become obvious to me over the years that is what I've done when students have come up and asked for my advice on things. But I think for me, forging equality for women is hampered by the thing we were discussing before we started the broadcast today, and that is that there is still a expectation within society that women will get married, pass over to the man, change their name, be called Mrs. When I was married, I was actually referred to as Mrs. John Smith, because my ex-husband had a brother, and so that was the way they distinguished between the wives of the brothers. And I really do firmly believe that for as long as that tradition continues, it's very difficult for us to be seen as equal, because we are seen as the one that is taken over by the man. That could be controversial. I could upset people by saying it, but it is actually something I feel very strongly about, that while we are seeing ourselves almost as an object that's passed on, for interest, I got married in Scotland because they don't give away the bride in Scotland. I really do feel that that is still a very negative impression upon us all, and it's an example actually that we are showing that is not necessarily a good one.
Absolutely, and probably there's a comment which raises another one of those ideas that we are all probably familiar with as well, and we can celebrate International Women's Day and say how important it is to champion other women, but sometimes there is negativity in the workplace, and there are still these kind of mean girl cultures that might develop and persist, which is awful. And I've been in those toxic environments, and I wouldn't wish them on anybody. Indrani, do you have any thoughts around that, kind of how we can support other women, especially when sometimes these other negative cultures may be present as well?
That's right, and it's something that we have to again go back to the roots of media cultures as well. I believe that there are certain things that's been normalized by the media within the society, and if you look into, there are these new things now coming up, which is called like Web2. So there are kind of series there where you can create, comics. And these are all kind of user-generated content. And what you will see is a lot of YouTube videos as well, where they kind of talk about, what a woman should do and how they should look like, what they should wear, how beautiful they should look like, and to impress at workplaces, and those kind of things. So I think that for equality, like if you're talking about that, I think it's more about celebrating our work rather than our physical appearances. I think that's very important, that it's not about how you're presenting yourself, but it's about your work that you need to celebrate. And as individuals, I believe that it brings us joy as well. So if I give you this morning's experience, so one of the colleagues, they just texted me this morning saying, well, these are the things that you're doing wonderful, and happy Women's Day. And it kind of cheered me up instantly, not because that they're saying that I'm doing good work, but because that they have remembered me on this day, and they're kind of texting me. So I think that kind of support where, we can take like very small steps, just kind of sharing our thoughts, just kind of telling them that they have been doing things, and also celebrating each other's work, I believe. That's another thing. So it's not about competing between women, but it's more about competing between work. So I believe that if our focus goes back to the work rather than gendered focus, it kind of eases out a bit.
It's really interesting thought. Thank you so much. I want to end on always my final question, which is always my favourite question, which is a quick whiz round, really, on your inspiration. Who is your role model? And I always like this because I always hear other people's role models and then think, oh, I must go and read about them as well and find out a bit more. So I always get quite inspired by hearing other people's role models. So I'm going to start first with Lubna.
So for me, it's Professor Sue Black. So for those of you who don't know about her, she kind of started on her STEM journey after she was a mother. She lived, I think, in a council estate, survived an abusive marriage, went on to get her qualifications at GCSE level. Beyond that point, it started her journey from then, and now she is Professor Sue Black at Durham University. I mean, it's an amazing journey. For those of you who don't know about her, please Google her name. Loads of inspirational, very motivational speeches and talks. that you can find from her. So she really is my role model.
Fantastic. Timmy?
Hello. So regarding my own role models, it's not exactly special to go look up, but these are my parents. And I will say my parents because I sort of know the kind of background my parents have, and looking at where they are at the moment in their various careers. I will literally say I'm proud of them, and their ambitiousness is something that inspires me as a person, and it makes me not limit myself to the background or the kind of upbringing I had, and it pushes me to want to grow, challenge myself, and go further than the sky, literally. So just staying ambitious, being constantly willing to learn, believing in myself, and figuring out my identity. With that way, I do not let like external factors decide or determine my own value and my worth in general. So yeah.
Great. Pamela?
For me, it's the three ladies that are shown in that wonderful film Hidden Figures. So the three ladies are Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Dorothy Vaughan, and they were just incredible. They just didn't care. They were going to do what they wanted to do, and got on with it and did amazing things. Just didn't let it stop them.
Fantastic, and a great film as well. Shivani?
My inspiration would be my father, because I've seen and learned a lot from him. Though through all the struggles he has made to come up, and all the things that he has done, and always be like a huge support for me. So my father, yeah.
Indrani?
So for me, there is a lady called Trisha Shetty, and she has got her charity. She's a lawyer by profession, but she has got her charity called She Saves, and she provides, and she kind of, it's very quietly, she works within the community, but at the same time, she has empowered quite a lot of women by actually helping them to talk about the violence that they have faced, and she has taken actions, but she has also influenced laws. And I think that's where my inspiration lies. Like for the last 2 years, I've kind of been following her quite a lot.
Great. And finally, Gemma?
Can I have two? That's really cheeky, isn't it? I want two. One, my grandma, because she never, ever, ever placed any restrictions or assumptions on me and what I could achieve. It was very much go out and be the world, and I will always be forever grateful for that, for my grandma, and that's deeply personal. But my second choice are two suffragettes, Nelly Hay and Annie Wheeler, and not many people know the story about them. Part of my volunteer role, I volunteer as a tour guide at the British Museum, and I take people to see the suffragette penny. And there's some museum history where these two known suffragettes came to the British Museum and they smashed loads of cases containing porcelain cups and saucers and mummies as a direct assault on the male authority figures at the time. And they obstructed the course of justice. They went on trial, they went to prison, they went on hunger strike, they were force-fed. And the museum was so incensed at what they had done, they issued this direct order that you could only visit the museum if you had a letter written by a man that was willing to vouch for your behaviour, because they caused so much damage. And I just love the anarchy behind them, that no matter what, they were going to go in there and they were going to cause all this damage. I'm not inciting violence, by the way, but I just love the fact that they wanted to stand up for something that they believe in, even though they knew it was going to get them into such dire trouble. And their stories are quite interesting to look up.
Fantastic, thank you. I normally go with Sheryl Sandberg. Her books Option B and Lean In, I think, are fantastic for resilience and also women in the workplace. But probably today I'm going to say all of you and all of the women that we are so fortunate and blessed to work with in our Faculty of Computing, Engineering and Media, striving against and battling down the challenges that we all face. So I'm going to have to draw it to a close now. But thank you so much, all of you, for giving up your time at lunch to talk about how we break the bias on International Women's Day. You can watch it again if you want to, and it will all be available to watch on our YouTube channels and on StreamYard as well. So thank you very much, all of you. Let's continue to break the bias. Goodbye.